Before I introduce the candidates, I will cover the ground rules. The candidates just drew lots to decide who will speak first. We will alternate who replies first thereafter. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. Afterwards, the candidates will respond to 4 questions from the panel. These questions were already provided to the candidates in advance. The panelists will ask 2 follow-up questions. 2 written questions will be taken from the audience. Each candidate will ask the other candidate 1 question. The candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Finally, each candidate has 2 minutes for closing remarks. There are 3 members of the question panel, 2 from the coalition, 1 from the league. Panelists, please tell us your name, group, and your ward, and let's begin with Ms. Bates.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Bates. I am a graduating senior at Philander Smith College, and I am a part of Ward 1.
I'm Ruth Bell. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and I live in Ward 6, and I spend a lot of time observing City Hall and the Little Rock Planning Commission.
Good morning, I'm Vanessa McEwen. I am the president of the Central High Neighborhood Association, and I live in Ward 1.
Thank you. Each response is timed. The timekeeper will give a warning by holding up a card when there is 30 seconds remaining. The city director candidates for Ward 3 are Ms. Kathy Webb and Mr. Jeffrey Yamauchi. As a reminder, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give opening remarks. Let's begin the opening remarks with Ms. Webb.
Thank you very much. My name is Kathy Webb, and I'm here to elicit your support for City Director Ward 3. First of all, I want to thank the coalition. I want to thank the League for hosting this forum, and I want to thank those in attendance for coming. I want to start out by telling you that I hope through the course of this exchange and this forum that you'll be able to see and hear and feel the passion that I have for the city of Little Rock and also for the neighborhoods that make up Ward 3. I was raised in Little Rock. I moved away as an adult, but I chose to come home and make my life here. I've been a small business owner, so I've had to make a payroll, and I've dealt with a lot of the problems that we face in city government. As the former co-chair of the Joint Budget Committee in the General Assembly, I know how to read a budget, and I know how to work with people of very differing points of view to pass a conservative budget that shows real stewardship of your money and that also meets the needs of our citizens. I live in the Plaza Heights neighborhood. It's a small neighborhood just west of Park Plaza. And in that neighborhood, I've worked to bring people together when we have had difficult issues that faced our neighborhood and that threatened to divide us. And I've also helped our neighborhood with beautification grants so we could make it a place where the kids who live in the neighborhood would enjoy coming to play. My priorities are going to be public safety, infrastructure, and economic development, and we'll go through more of that as the forum progresses, but I would appreciate your vote and support for Ward 3 Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Next, we'll have opening remarks from Mr. Yamauchi.
Good morning, and thank you for having me out here. I really appreciate it. My name is Jeffrey Yamauchi. I live in the Heights neighborhood, and I, too, am very community involved with my neighborhood. I'm the block captain of my street. I'm the one that hosts the block party, and I've also recently taken an inkling for wanting to take bigger part in the city's running and direction. Some of you may remember me from my work with the Project Progress Committee and the Revenue Task Force. I'm happy to say with the Project Progress Committee, we balanced and managed a $69 million budget and came in on time and under budget, and were able to fund additional projects out there that were not originally slated to be completed. I, too, believe that our city is a wonderful one, and I'd like to see definitely some improvements in the crime or the perception of crime. I'd like to see some also with the infrastructure, but I think our education is something that is most important out there. So I hope that you will support me for Ward 3 Board of Director.
Thank you. We have 4 questions from our panel. Let's have the first question from panelist Barry, and we will ask Mr. Yamauchi to respond first.
Oh, me?
Not
Bates.
Bates.
Bates, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, panelist Bates, Tamara Bates.
All right. Little Rock formerly adopted a plan for historic preservation, but failed to fund it. What would you budget, and what additional policies would you propose for restoration of our heritage?
Well, we have several historic buildings in my neighborhood, and I do like what they've done with them. And really, with the historic preservation of things like the old State House and the importance of remembering our history is something that I see definitely needs to be funded. However, I think that we have some bigger problems out there. I would like to maintain the level of funding that we are currently doing on the historic preservation. I'd like to, obviously do a cost of living adjustment for it every year, and definitely identify new places out there to preserve.
Thank you. Ms. Webb?
Thank you. I think that studies show that property values rise between 5 and 35% in neighborhoods where we have homes that are designated being historic homes versus the same homes and similar homes in the same neighborhoods that are not. So I think it's proven that it's a real benefit when we have this type of designation. Currently, we do have tax credits from the state, but one of the things I'm committed to do is to looking at the city budget because of some current issues that are really at the forefront now, like public safety. I'm going to have to look carefully at all of those issues before I would come up with a specific dollar amount for funding these types of programs.
Thank you. Our second question is from panelist Ms. Ruth Bell.
In voting on planning and zoning issues, how would you balance the city's need for economic growth with the citizens' desire for a livable neighborhood?
Ms. Webb?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I do think it's time that we had a comprehensive review of our zoning laws. And I don't say that as an excuse to forestall votes on issues that are currently before the city board or that we know are coming up, but I think it is time that we have a comprehensive review. Second, I think that we have to really look at the professionals that we have in the planning office because they're removed from the politics of what goes on as the process moves up. And so I think we have to look to them for guidance. And I think we also have to look outside the box and look at some best practices that we've seen in other cities where we've seen folks come together and try new things. We've got projects in Memphis where the citizens are coming to the table, opportunities for grants, and people are working together to balance the growth and the livability.
Time.
Thank you.
Mr. Yamauchi?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am.
Gladly.
Thank you.
In voting on planning and zoning issues, how would you balance the needs for the economic growth in the city with citizens' desire for livable neighborhoods?
Okay. In a lot of ways, I agree with Ms. Webb that planning is the most important thing. But part of planning is communication with the neighborhoods themselves. And that is where I think that we've fallen down sometimes because a lot of times we don't hear about the problems with a new plan development until the neighborhood gets whiff of it and they say, wait a minute, oh my gosh, this gas station's going in here. I think we need to make it a better communication with the citizenry that is going to be most affected by the new development. But always taking their comments because they have to live there. I've also seen, just in downtown, we've got mixed-use buildings with residential, retail, and hotel space. And I think that we're trying to find some unique new ways to use our space. So I hope that with planning and communication, we can get those two together, the growth and the happiness of the populace.
Ms. McEwen, will you ask question number 3?
Yes. Public works spending is allocated among the wards equally rather than on a needs-based basis listed by city professionals, which showed major work was needed in older city areas. Would you change streets and drainage allocations to a priority needs basis instead of an equal ward divisions?
Right. When it comes to public safety, if there is something that needs to be taken care of, for instance, we've got places where we've got open drains. As part of the Project Progress Committee, we did a lot of work, and I saw a lot of places in neighborhoods where literally there are no drains, there are just ditches, and I think that those pose risks. So I do think that in some cases, yes, we need to allocate more money to certain areas first, but that's based, and that really is based on emergency need, as I'd like to call it, in public safety.
Ms. Webb?
I think we've recently determined that we've got over $700 million in needs, and there's no way that we're going to be able to accomplish everything. And if I'm not mistaken, the city took 10% and set that aside for projects that are going to go between the wards as opposed to just allocating everything equally. Now, I don't know what the magic number is, but I think we do need to consider looking at 15%, 20%. Again, I'm not sure. I want to really study all of the projects, just not the ones in Ward 3, because I think that we need to consider support for projects that are outside our ward. I do believe that when we do that, we're going to lift up the whole city, and it's something that needs to be considered.
Ms. Bell, will you ask question number 4?
Be glad to. Through the years, the League has felt that city boards and commissions are more successful at doing their job if their membership represents the demographics of the city. How would you attract diverse applicants for positions on cities, boards, and commissions?
That's something that's been a long concern of mine, not only at the city level, but also at the state level, because I don't think we have the diversity that we need. So the first thing that I would do is to make it a priority as a city director to talk to people I know and ask them to talk to their friends to try to recruit more diverse candidates for city boards and commissions. The second thing I would do is I would look at what's working now, and I would keep those things that are working, and then I would discard the things that aren't and look for new ways. I would reach outside the norm, and I would go to the colleges and universities that we have to try to recruit some of the younger people to city boards and commissions. And the fourth thing I would do is where we have advertising that just says there's a vacancy, I would change that, and I would put a story about somebody who's currently serving on that board or commission to make it something that's more desirable. And so people would want to be part of that board or commission. I think we are much better served. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And that's a good answer on that. As far as diversity goes, I am the picture of diversity. I am the son of a Japanese man and a Scot-Irish woman. And I have served on several commissions throughout this city. And I was one of the ones that saw the advertising on Little Rock TV and said, I want to do something for this city. I would like to go out and actually recruit people, go to the areas of the city where we do have the minorities and the diversity out there and say, look, we need you to take part in this city, because when you take part in this city, you get a pride for the city. After I took part with the Project Progress, it made me feel like so much more of a better citizen out here. And I honestly think that if we can get more people involved in caring about this city through this diversity route, then we'll be a better city.
Thank you. We have 2 follow-up questions. The first follow-up question will come from either Ms. Bates or Ms. McEwen.
A question to pull together budget, planning, infrastructure. A good deal of the budget for housing and neighborhood programs is allocated to demolition of existing structures, resulting in public money going to decrease property value. Would you support a shift in funding to stabilization so that properties can be redeveloped?
Absolutely. One of the things that I've been noticing that's going on is in some of, for instance, towns like Detroit, we're getting partnerships between places like Habitat for Humanity and the city itself. I'm also seeing, for instance, in my neighborhood, things like community gardens that can fill those vacant lots and bring value back to the streets. And we can organically grow our tax base and our millage rate by improving each individual neighborhood. So I would like to work with outside groups to try to rehabilitate some of these properties. In some cases, we will have to demolish, but to get this city cleaned up. There's the broken window aspect, that when a window is broken, it decreases the entire value of the entire city. So that's kind of what I was thinking on that.
Ms. Webb?
Thank you. I don't think that demolition should be the first step, and I think we should have, that we do have incentives for rehab because we've got the 5 mills property tax. I think there are a lot of best practices out there. Mr. Yamauchi mentioned some things that are going on in Detroit, but I've found some things additionally in cities as diverse as Gary, Indiana, and Buffalo, New York, where there are programs like urban homestead programs and a dollar home program. And that's where citizens can pay $1. They show that they have the resources to fix up the home, and they agree to live in the home for 3 years. And while I don't think that this is a complete answer to the problem, I think nationally there is such a resurgence in this area that we've got a lot of opportunities to look and see what other people are doing well and bring some of those programs to our city so we can improve our situation with the weed lots and all the homes that are out there in disrepair.
Time.
We have one more follow-up question, and that question will be asked by Ms. Ruth Bell.
Going back to the League's interest in planning and zoning, what 3 criteria, if you have time to put in 3 criteria, would you use to evaluate business development applications?
Ms. Webb?
Thank you. I mean, that's a
a hard question.
No, I think it's a good question. And I think that, again, I said earlier that I think we need to have a complete review of our planning and zoning laws. So, my start would be to do a complete review. And I think we've got to look at each neighborhood and figure out, the balance between the development and the livability of the neighborhood. So that would be a criteria. And I think we need to look at, how it would, impact the quality of life in the neighborhood. To go back and be really specific about 3 certain criteria that would be the first 3 is something that I need to do some more research on.
Time.
Mr. Yamauchi, will you respond to the same question?
Yes, I will. I, too, have a little bit of difficulty with that, but that is an interesting thing because you do have to have the balance. And I think that each business is going to be needed to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, money comes into the equation of what they're going to bring to the tax base of the city, also how it's going to affect the lives of the community that are immediately surrounding, and how it is going to affect the flow of traffic, et cetera. But I've seen towns, such like Houston, where there's been no real zoning or planning, and it's a nightmare. So I think that we do need to get in front on each and every business and take them on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. We have collected questions from the audience, and the first question is, given Little Rock's crime rate that is chronically elevated above national average, what do you propose to resolve this problem so that I can tell people our city is going to be a safer place to live and shed our high crime rate image? And I'm going to ask Mr. Yamauchi to respond first.
Well, the other night I went out to meet the new chief of police down in Southwest Little Rock, and while I was out there, I got to meet and see some of the things that they're already doing, like the COP program. And I like this. I like the community involvement. I think that when you get to know people on an individual, one-on-one basis, especially the officers patrolling your area, that helps. Number two, I think that we need to concentrate our efforts in areas where there are high amounts of crime. What we find is that crime moves away when it's more difficult to commit crime, and you don't have as much. So I'd really like to see our efforts put into areas where there's a high amount of crime. I'd also like to see the prioritization of certain crimes and misdemeanors out there. I think we've got more problems than we know what to do with out there. But also, I'd like to get the citizenry involved. I'd like them to know and be.
Ms. Webb?
Thank you. I've had the opportunity to listen and visit with the new chief as well, and I like some of his ideas about hot spots and some things like that. I think we've got to do some big things and some little things. And first, I think we do need to keep as a priority the spending for public safety in our budget, and I think we've got to make sure that we have our jail fully funded and those beds that are available for it. I think there's some things that we might not think about off the top of our heads that we also need to consider, and one of those things could be changing traffic patterns in a neighborhood that we know have impacted crime in other parts of the city and in other cities. It's something that's been successful. One of the neighborhoods in the ward in Briarwood, they have a sort of a model community watch program, and the studies show that their crime has decreased through that neighborhood watch. And so I think it is important to get people involved. We can't spend our way. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more audience question, which is, Little Rock metro area is surrounded by a belt of residential development that forces new development to leapfrog over into far west Pulaski County. Do you support incorporation of these areas into Little Rock? And the first response will come from Ms. Webb.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's up to me to call for incorporation of those areas into the city of Little Rock. It's something that I would certainly be willing to take a look at, but we've got to talk to the citizens who live in that area to find out what their needs are before we start talking about incorporating.
Mr. Yamauchi.
I somewhat agree on that. Plus, we need to do some studies on incorporating these areas and see if their infrastructure is compatible with ours. If the spreading out of our city and the sprawl, the increase in sprawl is going to stress our services that are out there. I mean, right now, when Chenal first developed, it was difficult sometimes for the police to make it out there in a timely manner because we didn't have the infrastructure set up yet. Our fire department wasn't set up there yet. So we need to really look at these things and see what infrastructure is in place out there already before we do anything like this. And also, we have to make sure that these people want to be incorporated as well.
Thank you. Each candidate may ask the other candidate one question. So to start, Mr. Yamauchi, you may ask Ms. Webb one question.
Ms. Webb, what do you think you bring to the table for this city, and what would be your biggest contribution?
Thank you for that question. I think I bring a lot of experience to the table. And I think I bring an ability to work with people of widely varying points of view and show results. And I have a track record that does that, of listening to people, of looking deep for answers, and trying to come up with practical solutions to problems. Sometimes they're little things, and sometimes they're big things. And I think that track record is something that is critical for the place we are in our city, and that would be hard to replicate.
All right.
Ms. Webb, you may ask Mr. Yamauchi one question.
Like math problems.
You like math problems? Well, in the spirit of fairness, then I will ask you the same question that you asked me.
I think that when I come to this city, I bring a resilience, I bring effort, I bring a sharp mind. Working in business like I've been at a durable medical company, I've increased our business 300% since I've gotten there and reduced our costs by almost 50% in terms of inventory. I think that by putting my business acumen from there and bringing it to the city, I think that I can make a change in our city's budget and be a benefit to all of the citizenry.
Thank you. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes for closing remarks. Candidates may choose to address or clarify any issues that may have come up during questions.
First of all, thank you very much again for having me out here. I appreciate so much that we got to do this. And thank you to Ms. Webb. I appreciate you bringing your experience with you and running for this office. I just want to say that I love this city. I moved back here from Dallas, Texas after college because without a job. Because I honestly really enjoyed my friends, my family, and I wanted to be close to them. I enjoyed being outside in nature, and I just love this city. Later in life, I went on to take roles actively participating in the running of the city, and I think that with my experience in business and my ability to work with others like you, I work for a minority-owned business. I recently 2 years ago, have made the hires of a Spanish language sales representative, and, we go bowling together. So that's part of what I wanted to say for the crime, the infrastructure, all that is education. And education's not just book smarts, it's getting to know the people around you and getting to know what the concerns are for individual neighborhoods and getting to know the concerns for the Central High neighborhood and being knowledgeable about it and understanding their problems, that we ourselves can help them better those problems. So I hope that you will support me for Ward 3 Board of Director, and I thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Webb.
Thank you very much. Once again, thank you for hosting the forum, and Mr. Yamauchi, thank you for being here and for seeking public office. I hope you have seen that I'm passionate about our city. I'm passionate about the neighborhoods. I chose to come back here to be with my family, and I chose to live here. One of the points I want to emphasize is the results record that I have in working with people of various points of view to accomplish great things. I think we can solve problems, and the first step in solving a problem is to acknowledge that we have it and then to making a commitment to do something about that problem. I've had the opportunity to serve the city last year on the Housing Authority and currently serving on the Airport Commission. So I get a lot of calls about bags and delayed flights and lines. I share your frustrations on many levels. As a citizen, I have those same frustrations with potholes and lights and crime. I want to go to City Hall to be your advocate, to be your voice there, and I guarantee that I'm going to study this city budget the way I did the state budget and the way I studied my budget as a small business owner, and I'm going to make sure that we use your tax dollars wisely. Last year, I had the biggest fight of my life, and I won that fight in overcoming breast cancer. And I can assure you that I'm going to fight for you every day as your city director. Thank you.
This concludes Ward 3 segment of the forum. Thank you to the candidates for your participation, and thank you to the audience for your attendance and questions. I want to remind everyone that early voting begins October 20th, and Election Day is November 4th. My name is Sheila Miles with the Wright Avenue Neighborhood Association, and I have served as your moderator for the Ward 3 segment of this candidate forum.